Hello, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingras, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat show trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. As I've told you, those of you who are repeat listeners, that I am a clinical psychologist and a neuropsychologist, which is a brain doctor kind of thing. And been in private practice for a long time, been a psychologist for over 40 years, and worked a lot with ADHD throughout my career. And oh, by the way, I have a couple of ADHD kids, one of each, one inattentive, one hyperactive, and I married into an ADHD family. So, and my audio engineer who just told me that my mic is live, which has been a recurring problem. Anyway, I try to keep up with the literature that's out there in the world, and just saw an article about all these things that are comorbid, which means just occur along with ADHD, and some of them are kind of have a genetic component, but about 5 of them, I guess, really, I don't know, stuck in my craw or something, because I usually tell you guys at least once a week that the average ADHD kid gets 70 critical comments a day. Okay, now that is going to cause some adaptations and adjustments, which may not be all that positive. Okay, so and that's where a lot of this comes from. It's not that they're broken. I mean, they have ADHDers have a different kind of brain, not necessarily a disability kind of brain. It's just that it doesn't fit with what our society wants. It wants a lot of compliant people who can sit quietly, take lots of notes, and pass the test, and that's how you get to all kinds of places in life. But most of the good stuff happens with that. If your brain happens to be somewhat different, as in you like stimulation, you like excitement, you like creative stuff, all those kinds of things, you don't necessarily fit in to what most of society's looking for. Oh yeah, I mean, we want people like that. We want athletes, and we want artists and musicians and actors and artists and that sort of thing. We just don't want too many of them, but the thing I have some concerns about is, okay, 5 of the things that I could see as being sort of a normal reaction to ADHD are anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, and oppositional defiant disorder, and sometimes learning disabilities. Okay, I'll just go through them one at a time. Okay, anxiety. First of all, anxiety, it's fear, another fancy word for fear. And you're having all the degrees of discomfort that go along with fear. And it can go all the way from just a little, oh, I don't want to do that, to a full-blown panic attack where you're gasping for breath and sweating, and everybody in the room knows there's something's going on, that kind of thing. Okay, but think about this. If I'm an ADHD kid, I am in an environment, I'm in school, say, I'm in an environment where I'm pretty sure I'm going to get criticized. Not sure exactly when it's going to happen, but I'm going to be criticized, and it's not going to be pretty, and it depends, because sometimes adults are cool, can kind of say, hey, maybe you want to rethink that and do it. And sometimes it's like, what's the matter with, so depending on how hard the response is, it'll depend on how big the the child is reaction is. And there are confounds. Okay, having ADHD means you're going to have trouble sitting still for extended periods of time. Okay, so what do we do when you're 6 or so? We send you to sit in a classroom for 5 or 6 hours a day, playing quietly, and learning quietly. Okay, it's not natural, and you're going to have some problems, and you're probably going to have some people, big people, uh, trying to get you to calm down. And sometimes they're going to be people who don't know anything about ADHD. Uh, and sometimes they're going to be people who have their own troubles and don't really have enough extra energy to deal with somebody who's disrupting their quiet place. So anyway, and anxiety is also, the thing with people is that almost everything we do, know, feel is something we learned. Okay, it's not like we've isolated the gene for anxiety particularly. It is kind of trained in, though. I mean, people with anxious parents tend to have anxiety themselves. Same with anger and depression and that sort of stuff. I mean, and there's some biology involved, but then a lot of it is learned. Oops, mom has panic attacks every time we get in a car or drive over a bridge or something. So that must be what big people do, and so I'm going to start practicing that myself. And of course, this is not the way people are actually thinking about it, but it is what tends to happen. It is what tends to be passed on, and that makes trying to decide if it's genetic or not kind of a tricky deal too. Anxious kids tend to come from anxious families. And we do the same thing with talent, athletic kids tend to come from athletic families. Well, he just has good genes. Probably not. But I bet dad practiced with him a lot, or mom, so that he developed the skills. Okay, so that's anxiety. Depression. Oh, okay. Most of us have felt sad. Most of us have been in, oh, God, I'm so burned out, wiped out, da 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 da. But most of us know what depression is. Okay, it becomes an issue when you're a kid and you're in a situation where you can't win, and you just know something bad's going to happen. Somebody's going to punish you. Somebody's going to yell at you. Somebody's going to make fun of you. Da 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 da. And you tend to develop kind of low self-esteem, and leading to depressed mood, and and if it goes on and on and on, it gets worse and worse and worse. But basically, it's a learned thing. Most depression has a huge learning component to it. And I'm not inventing this. This is pretty well established. Like I said before, when we were talking about anxiety, it's really difficult to tease out what's learned and what's some way genetic that we don't really understand or can't measure, or da 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 da. So that's depression. Obsessive compulsive. And, these are all things I've seen in patients that I've had. Obsessive compulsive disorder. Those are people who become infection control nurses and safety engineers when they make it through school. But basically, everything's got to be just so. Everything, I can't just know that's out of balance. Something's off the pile of papers on my desk. I can't do without that. I've got to, you know, and this is one of those things that, you can have a little bit of it or you can have a whole bunch of it. But basically, what you're trying to do as an ADHDer is you're trying to compensate for the problems you have with executive functioning, working memory, all that sort of thing. We always tell people with working memory problems that they need to write things down. And yeah, that's a good idea to a point, but you can't be writing down every 5 minutes what you're doing or what you're thinking and that sort of thing, or you'll never get anything done. Okay, with obsessive compulsive kind of thing, it's an attempt to avoid punishment by not making mistakes. Good God, I don't want to make any mistakes. I mean, that'd be horrible. I would be punished, and I don't like being punished. And it really makes me feel bad. These are people who are incredibly rigid, always trying to avoid mistakes, always trying to avoid problems, always thinking they can be safe if they just do this. And it can go to extremes, where they check the front door is locked 12 times before they can get out of the driveway because they're just unsure. It feels bad. I might have forgotten. And that's also an attempt to compensate, for the things that naturally happen to an ADHD kid. Going to forget more things than most folks do. Going to totally space out on doing some things that they're supposed to be doing, and have trouble sitting still, tend to be restless and wiggling around. And none of that is particularly prescribed. So that's one of the other things that can happen to an ADHD child. And the next one would be oppositional defiant disorder. Oppositional defiant disorder are usually teenagers who have been punished within an inch of their lives, and they decide, well, I can't win no matter what I do, so screw you, and so on. And these are basic. They're the hardest guys to work with. I say guys because most of them are males and most of them are teenagers, and you just have a lot of trouble trying to get them to trust you. It's hard to do therapy without being trusted, or having established a mutual trust relationship. And these people have not had very good relationships with the other authority figures in their environment. So essentially it's, well, I can't please you no matter what I do, so screw you, and those are the kids that, usually were not treated for their ADHD. They did get their 70 critical comments every day, and sometimes a lot of punishment along with that. And they were made fun of, and they figured out, they start hanging out, and then you've got problems. These are the kids that end up on street corners, sometimes buying drugs, sometimes selling them, sometimes just doing all kinds of things that are not in their best interest. Boy, did that sound lame. But the deal, you get a kid in a situation where he feels like he can't win. No matter what I do, it's going to be wrong. No matter what I do, it isn't going to be enough. It isn't going to be good enough. Okay, and these are the kids, these are kids that are tough to work with because they don't trust people, especially they don't trust adults, and they don't trust people in authority. And it gets to be a really rough pattern to break, and it's hard. It takes lots of time to get these kids so they're doing better, so they calm down a little bit, they start to trust a little bit. And when they can do that, then you're going to see some improvements. Okay, and these are the ones that I really am, that these are the diagnoses that are frequently just the most frequently just a misfit between the way their brain works and what society is saying is the way it should work. Okay, then we have another category, which is tricky, and that's learning disabilities. Okay, now I've done all sorts of educational evaluations and that sort of stuff, diagnosed learning disabilities, dyslexia, and all sorts of things. Um, the problem with this is, learning to say read. That's dyslexia is probably the most common learning disability. Learning it's a skill. Reading is a skill. It is not based on some innate ability to translate symbols into words or that sort of thing. It's learned. You have to learn to first you have to recognize the letters, then you have to recognize the sounds that they represent. Then you have to recognize when you put 3 or 4 or 5 of them together, what words they represent. And then you have to be able to put the words into sentences that mean something. And this requires some patience, and it requires some time spent. And it's hard to tease out, because there are some parts of dyslexia that are, your brain just doesn't, it either doesn't recognize the letters, has trouble telling one from the other, or they can't hang on to what the sound they represent. But the other part of that is you have to be able to sit for a while and look at the same things over and over again until you can decode them. And that's frequently ADHD. Oh, I'm dyslexic. Well, no, you're not really dyslexic. It's just you couldn't stand, you didn't have the patience to go through the drills that you were given to make you a good reader. That's, it's horribly oversimplified, but that's basically the way it is. The problem with that is that no reading teacher is necessarily particularly well trained and tuned into ADHD. Some are. I'm not going to paint the whole profession with with the notion that they just don't understand this stuff, because some of them clearly do. Some of them are probably ADHD themselves. Somewhat surprisingly, teaching is one of those professions that's frequently recommended for ADHD people. Anyway, so that's my deal. These are the most common diagnoses, comorbid diagnoses with ADHD. They are a reaction to the interaction of the ADHD brain and a neurotypical society, and that's about as complicated as it gets. It doesn't mean you're a terrible, horrible person as a parent. It means that life is tough for ADHD kids. It just is, and your deal is to spend time building resilience. This is my thing, my soapbox. Got to build resilience. Got to build the ability to look at it. Oops, this didn't work out the way I wanted it to. What am I going to do about it? What did I learn from it? What can I do differently next time? Got to have that attitude, instead of why do you always screw up? Why can't you do like all the other kids, and other things like that sometimes parents say that they wish they hadn't later on in life. But these are all reactions to the misfit between the ADHD brain and the neurotypical society. And that's what exacerbates it, makes it worse. Okay. So, as the parent, your job is to try to stay in a problem solving mode, and teach them to stay in a problem solving mode. Because we know ADHD kids are bright. We know that in general, they, on average, are brighter than probably the neurotypical kids around them. They've got to be, because none of them would survive if they couldn't figure stuff out. So encourage that problem solving mind bent, encourage that learning from mistakes way of looking at life, and let me know how that works out. Okay, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and my website is terrygingrassphd.com. If you're looking for coaching, there's a place there to sign up. And I've got some other stuff that'll be coming down the pike in the next few months. So listen, and we'll try to get the word to you. Okay. terrygingrassphd.com. Have a good day.